Hi guys, it's Kyle Morrison here from menafterdivorce.com. Today I just want to talk about a phenomenon that I've seen around more recently, which is living with your wife or ex-wife, perhaps I should say, after separation and divorce. It's not something I recommend, something that I didn't do in my divorce, but I understand it's a lot more common perhaps than a lot of people think. So if you're interested in this or you're somebody living in this situation now, I just thought I'd delve into why that is and the consequences behind it and perhaps how to make the best of it as well. So first of all, I talked to a few men online and some guys that I knew about this as well and came up with a couple of things that sort of led to this situation, I guess. And one of those, the first and foremost, seemed to be money, of course. So they were saying that they couldn't afford to move out, or they couldn't afford to divvy up the house and so forth. It was a temporary situation while they saved, those sorts of things. But if you're living with your wife, ex-wife, you're going through a divorce, and there's money involved as well, it's a pretty dismal situation. However, I don't want to dismiss the fact that money is really important in this case. So some guys will, it is just the money, and that's it. But I found that quite a lot of guys later admitted that it wasn't really about the money. Perhaps that was more of an excuse. Because, if you're really not happy living with your ex-wife, you can usually find the cash to move out or find somebody to stay with. So there are some other issues as well. The next one is children, kids. Now this is kind of fair enough, I guess. If the custody situation has not been worked out, then the security and safety of your children is paramount, and so that is one thing where I'm like, okay, if it's an amicable divorce, you can do this, but even so, it's still sending a very mixed message to these kids. So you've got to be very careful about how you broach the issue, and things can still flame up. It might actually be better not to be there in some cases, but I'm not going to tell people how to raise their kids and how to do that. But obviously, children are an impact. So you really just got to say, what is best for the kids? Is it really better for you to stay there, or is it better for you to work on helping the kids understand about the divorce, and then moving out, but still being in contact and so forth might actually be better than staying there and the arguments and the fights in front of the kids. That can just be very bad. Another thing, and this is what I found once you dug a bit deeper, was attachment. You're still attached to your ex-wife. You may sometimes hate them. Sometimes you might not. You may not want this divorce in any way whatsoever. But being attached to your wife and not really wanting to let go, people will find all sorts of excuses to hang around, even though they know it's over. When you look at the stages of divorce, the stages of grief, I should say, is what this is about. This is almost the denial stage, the first stage. You do not want to let go. You're sort of denying it's really happening, so you're clinging to whatever you can to stay there. So some guys will do it just because they want to be around. Sometimes they may know in their heart of hearts it's over, but they can't bring themselves to leave. It's just too emotionally distressing, I guess. So that is an issue as well. And the next one, which I found interesting, was pride, stubbornness, not wanting to move out almost as a passive, aggressive reaction or action against your ex. So saying, well, I'm going to hang around here until I'm good and pleased to move out, so you can be there to annoy them. Now, this is obviously very dangerous ground. Sometimes you might get here if you're mired in the anger stage of divorce, when you're so angry that you just want to do anything you can to hurt them or to make them feel bad as you feel bad. And hanging around might do that to them, but it's also going to hurt you too. So it's a two-way street, a double-edged sword, I guess you could say, and the motives behind it are not good to begin with. So between these four things, these are the major factors I found with staying with your wife after separation and divorce. So the question, I guess, is, should you stay with your wife? Should you stay with your ex? Should you live in the same house as them with your kids, or without kids if you don't have kids? When I started, I first thought, no, just don't do it. This can only lead to bad things. But when I thought about it, there are cases where this is obviously going to be a necessity, or it might be beneficial if the children are involved and you are getting along well enough with your ex-wife to do this. So basically, sort of 4 points. I said, it's got to be an amicable divorce. You can't have hostility always running through things. I mean, amicable divorce is an oxymoron if I ever heard one, but sometimes it's not going to be as bad as others. So if you're engaged in a really bitter divorce, just get out of there, I would say. If children involved, they need to be treated fairly and made to be understood what's happening from the get-go. You can't try to pretend that it's not happening and using them as sort of a pawn in this passive-aggressive game. That's not going to work either. You've got to do it out of a sense of cooperation, not out of a sense of hostility, as I've said. And if money is the real issue, then you should still be saving up as soon as you can to move out or find someone you can live with. Anything at all, you've got to set yourself a date to get out of there. You can't continue it, so you've got to have those future plans in mind. So if you are in this situation, or you're looking into this situation, then there are a couple of tips that worked for a couple of guys that I spoke to. And the first one is separate sleeping arrangements. Don't sleep in the same bed, obviously. Don't even sleep in the same room. Make sure that you are completely away from yourself when you go to sleep. There's just something about going to bed in the same area as the ex-wife. It's just not good at all. So make sure that you've got separate sleeping arrangements, please. Make sure you draft a living agreement is a good idea as well. This is a formal process divorce. If you're going to stay together, you've got to make it a bit of a formal process as well. So make sure that you have something written down which will tell, who's going to do the cleaning, who's going to clean the house or look after the kids, who's going to be in what area of the house at what time, are you going to have friends over. Just make sure that you understand that there is, you are two different people now living in the same house. Because if you don't have this agreement set up, you'll either lapse back into old ways or you'll just start disagreeing on everything at all. Whereas before you may have been cooperating in the marriage, now you'll both try to destroy it. So you've got to have some sort of formal agreement. Another thing is your own space. This is similar to the separate sleeping arrangements, I guess. But you've just got to make sure that if you're going to have this house, divide the house into sections, or at least make sure that you've got your own place to be, so you're not constantly crossing each other's paths. You've got to give yourself time to be apart, even if you're in the same house. Things can go wrong if you're just constantly squished together. Now, obviously, if it's in a very small space, then this is going to be very difficult, and you should be getting out of there as soon as you can. Scheduling, as I kind of alluded to before, make sure you let them know, and make sure you let your ex-wife know when she's doing something too. Schedule what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to have, friends coming at the wrong time or relatives, and, it could get ugly. So just make sure you schedule things properly, and especially if you have kids too, make sure you schedule that really, really well to make sure that they're not missing out on anything that they should be getting. And do not delay. As I've written, you've got to get out of there eventually. Make sure that you don't use all these sorts of things as a way to sort of safeguard yourself into that situation where you feel almost comfortable living with them but being divorced. You've got to break that attachment. You've got to break that cycle, and you do have to get out of there. So from the get-go, you should be looking at how you should be getting out of there and when, and making sure you set a date for that as soon as you can, because you need to move, or they need to move. Obviously, usually it's the guy that moves, but that's not always the case. But you need to make sure there is a plan to get the hell out of there. Otherwise, you will be stuck there for a long time and doing yourself emotional harm, and same with your ex-wife too. So, I hope that helped if you're in that situation, or if you've got somebody living in that situation, or maybe you're a lady who has her ex-husband living with them, to understand, how this is going to affect them as well. But if you're a guy and you're struggling with divorce, the emotional aspects of it, I don't talk about the financial aspects so much. There's plenty of that around. I talk about sort of recovery from divorce. So if you're having a hard time, then head over to my website, menafterdivorce.com, and I've got an ebook there which is my thoughts. I'm a divorced man myself. It's about how to recover emotionally, how to get back on with your life, and without taking all that baggage and bitterness with you. So hopefully if you're struggling, then click through that link and get some help, and I hope it really does help.